here for LowKick, mate. Tonight I'm delighted to be joined by Michael Bisping, who's here to talk about his upcoming documentary, The Michael Bisping Story. How's it going, Mike?
I'm very well, thank you. Pleasure to talk with you.
Great. And the first question I've got, obviously I watched it the other day. Why now for this documentary? Was it the whole coming to the end of your career? Is that what triggered this for you?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I had a long and storied career. It's plenty of ups and downs, lots of challenges and adversity along the way. And I was able to triumph in the end and become champion of the world. And it is quite a story. And somebody approached me about this idea of doing it. And I wasn't sure about it, but they were like, Mike, this is such an incredible story. We think it will inspire a lot of people. And I was like, okay, all right, let's do it. So we started filming in 2018. And now here we are. It's about to be released. So I'm very excited for the world to see it. There's a lot of work gone into this, a lot of time and effort, a lot of editing. A lot of people kindly gave up the time. We had some great people giving up their time and speaking. Dana White, Joe Rogan, Vin Diesel, Mickey Rourke, tons of great fighters, George St. Pierre, et cetera, et cetera. So, I'm very happy with the finished product.
Yeah, and you mentioned there you were approached by the team. I'm guessing that was led by Michael Hamilton. Why was it him who chose to tell your story? Obviously, it's a great story, as you mentioned. I'm sure there's plenty of people who offered doing this documentary. Why him? Why this team?
Yeah, well, it was actually a company called Electric Panda, a very good friend of mine, Yaz Talat and Gabriel Naporo. They approached me initially about this, and then they went to Scourge Productions and Michael Hamilton. They're award-winning documentary makers, so, they had a great resume coming into this because, you don't just want to anybody just say, we want to make a documentary about it. I said, well, are you any good? Do you know what I mean? But as I say, these guys have a long track record of doing incredible documentaries. So I felt confident and they've smashed it out of the park. Michael Hamilton, the director, did a great job. Adam Scorgi, his whole team, Yaz Talat, Electric Panda. I'm very, very grateful to all of them. And as I say, I mean, this documentary is not really, it's about a fighter's story, but it's also about a human being overcoming challenges, adversity, and, refusing to give up, essentially.
Yeah, and that was my favorite part about it. Obviously, we all know the story, the downs and ups and becoming champion eventually, but the background and how all that come into place was brilliant. So did you enjoy the process of kind of going back, kind of reevaluating your life and how you got into the position you're in right now?
It was hard many times. Do you know what I mean? Because the director was asking a lot of personal questions, about my childhood and things like that, and about, motivation and some of the darkest days, because there was plenty of dark days, you know what I mean? Like when I had started with the visions with my eyeball, I was forced to sit on a couch for a year and I thought that my career was over and things like that. But also at the same time, it is fun to sit around and talk about how great you are. I'm just kidding. It's always nice to revisit those big moments, but the darker moments, that's a challenge, and that's the thing. That this documentary is very much warts and all. It focuses on a lot of the losses, how hard it is to rebound from a loss. Some of the guest speakers like Michael Jai White say some very poignant words. It was mixed emotions.
Yeah, and you touched on it there. Obviously, you went back to your childhood. You told us a bit about that. A lot of people might not know. And you grew up in a chaotic kind of household, whereas compared to your wife, Rebecca, she seemed to be the calming influence on you. So, and she was one of the people who stood out to me in the documentary in terms of the stuff she said, in terms of her devotion to you and the family and her role in your success. Yeah, really stood out to me. And I just want to, when you go back and you're watching the kind of things she's saying, what are you making of it?
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And my wife was absolutely instrumental. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now. And it's as simple as that. She was supportive right from day one in terms of me doing this. Maybe a lot of women wouldn't be. She was there every step of the way. She really was my rock. And she and the children are why I do this. Not only was she very supportive and in her own way and assisted in any way she could, but also she's my inspiration and my reason for doing it in the first place. So when I sit there and I watch it back and I see the kind words that she says and other people say, yeah, it brings a tear to my eye. Anytime I see my kids or my wife saying something nice about me on camera, I always start tearing up like a bloody, I do. It's embarrassing. I remember at the Hall of Fame, she gave a great speech there, and I was backstage waiting to go on, bloody blubbering like a bloody little boy. And I'm like, get it together, Bisping.
And was she kind of the thing that turned your life around? Because there seems to be in the story, it kind of you get in trouble from a street fight, you end up in prison for a little bit. You come out and kind of make the decision to change your life or change the direction you're going in. You say, I'm not going back there again.
Yeah.
But was it kind of meeting her that kind of allowed you to stay on that good path?
Oh, 100%. As I say, if it wasn't for her, I'd still be in Clitheroe right now, probably in and out of prison, working dead-end jobs. I'd like to think that I wouldn't be, but that was a good possibility. And as I say, as you say, I did get sent down. I was never a criminal, but I was always getting into scraps. You know what I mean? Go figure. I ended up becoming a professional fighting champion of the world. And when you're growing up in a small town, everyone knows each other, and you know they're always challenging and whatnot. And there was a bit of alcohol involved, so that doesn't help, especially when you're a young man. So as I say, I wasn't a criminal, but I was always a scrapper. You know, and I ended up in prison, sadly. And I remember that day when I was in there and I was in the holding cell. I was looking around, thinking, "Wow, is this what my life has come to?" You know, and then my wife, Rebecca, came to visit me in prison, and she was pregnant with our first son. And if you want to talk about really reaching rock bottom, I felt like the biggest loser sitting there with my fiance, well, girlfriend at the time, pregnant and with my first child, and I'm in prison. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, right, I've got to do something about this. I've got to make a change, you know? And I did, but it wasn't this change. That took a while. The first change was just holding down a regular job and not getting in trouble. But that's not really a high bar in life to achieve, is it? Do you know what I mean? That's just normal expected behavior to work and not get arrested, you know? So it was after some other time, you know, we were working hard. She worked as a dental nurse. I was working, but still broke at the end of the week. You know, you can just about afford to pay the bills, but no luxuries, no, you know, still struggling, still having to borrow money here and there. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, there's got to be more to life than this. And I started thinking and soul searching what I could do. And I'm like, well, I had a lot of success as a martial artist. I know I can fight because sadly I was fighting a lot. I kind of feel like that's my talent. Where can I take this? You know, and put this plan into play. Then you'll see that in the documentary. But yeah, and then here we are today, mate, talking to you.
Yeah, and it really starts to, you know, pick up once you make the decision to fully pursue it. It opens up. You become really successful, you know, quite quickly. But the interesting for me, and sorry to keep touching on the dark days, is
no, absolutely fine. Is what makes it interesting. I'd rather talk about that than how great I am.
Yeah, and it's the stuff I haven't been privy to previously. So obviously we know that Dan Henderson, the first fight, didn't go your way. And obviously you'd expect, you know, there's some behind the scenes stuff that, you know, would have went on mentally for you, but we get to see it in the documentary, how you cope with that, how you dealt with it. And then basically the question that arises from that is that when do you actually think you got over that defeat? Because you went on, you beat Anderson Silva. Was it KO and Luke Rockhold, or was it not until you actually got the rematch and got the decision?
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's an interesting question, you know, and we do spend a lot of time in the documentary discussing that, you know, and what fighters go through when they lose. You know, Joe Rogan has some great words. Michael Jai White has some amazing words as well. But yeah, it's hard for a fighter. See, the thing is, you know, we go out there, we fight in a cage, and one guy wins, one guy loses. And fans, you know, people on the internet, they're pricks. Yeah, and the fighter already feels crushed. Not only have you lost a fight, not only have you endured physical pain, but you failed in your mission. Your career is on the downslide. You know, the trajectory is not going where it needs to be. Plus, there's financial loss as well. And then there's the embarrassment and the shame that you feel. And then you go online and there's everyone mocking you, you know, and I got mocked after that one for years and years and years, and I had to deal with that. But for me, that just kind of spurred me on more than ever. And it made that chip on my shoulder even bigger, you know, because I was like, no way, I am not done. If you think that's it, you know, I'm going to prove a point to everybody, you know, and that was kind of my mission, my goal, to prove everybody wrong. I knew I could do this, but nobody believed in me. Well, very few people. So yeah, no, it's, and when did I get over it? I don't know, mate. Maybe I still haven't.
Right. And you mentioned earlier about some of the people who make cameos in it, and obviously there's honestly too many to talk about right now. But Dana White, you know, from an outside point of view, you seem to be one of his favorite fighters ever. You love to scrap. You always say yes. You don't seem to complain too much about money. How is the relationship between you and Uncle Dana?
Yeah, no, Dana is an incredible man, right? And I know he gets a lot of shit, but he's got a business to run. He's got 500 psychopaths on his roster. So he has to deal with a lot of stuff, and he's always putting fires out. For me, if I've ever needed anything from Dana, he has never let me down once. He's been a very good friend to me over the years. He's come through and done things for me that were not expected, that were above and beyond. He's also had to call me up now and again and say, Bisping, what the fuck are you doing? Do you know what I mean? So there's been a bit of back and forth. And of course, as fighters, we always want more money, but I earned very, very well throughout my career. I don't like to talk about it too much because it sounds like you're bragging, but I did very good. And Dana always paid me fantastically. And every fight pretty much, even in the early days when my contract wasn't all that great, he would give me massive checks backstage. You know what I mean? Massive checks. And I just didn't expect. So he's been great. He's been fantastic. You know what? Do you have a boss? Who are you with? LowKick MMA? Who owns LowKick MMA?
A guy called Ian. So yeah, we got on.
Right. So if you go out there and do interviews with me and you start saying, Ian's a prick, Ian's this, Ian's that, Ian can kiss my ass. All of a sudden, I don't think Ian's going to be giving you a lot of opportunities and like talking about you well. And that's what people do. Do you know what I mean? If you've got a problem, because I've had problems, I go talk to Dana directly like a man. And we always compromise, and we've meet in the middle. And he's been very, very fair over the years. So yeah, I have tremendous respect and gratitude for the opportunities that I've been given. As you say, I was at rock bottom. I was in prison. I left school at 16. I've got no education. I'm sitting in a beautiful house here in California. I've got a nice swimming pool outside. I've got a great career. I've got financial, I've got a nice nest egg put away from my retirement and my children. So yeah, I'm very grateful for the UFC.
Yeah, and just finally on the cameos, Luke Rockhold pops up in the film, and I'm just the one thing about his particular interview, I was thinking while I'm watching it, when was this filmed? Because he still seemed to basically hate you while it's getting filmed, and since then obviously you have made up, but I'm guessing this was a while ago. Your guy spoke to him.
No, this was as I said, this has been in the making for a long, long time. So this was probably 2018. I know our paths had never crossed, and I was probably still back then. I feel I've matured a bit since then. I'm certainly, I haven't been a fighter now for 5 years. So like, it takes a while for that guy, that fighter, that person, that spirit, if you will, to kind of die off. He doesn't exist anymore. I'm not a fighter. I don't look at the other fighters as competition. When you're actively a fighter, you do. It's just like, and the way my mind works is like, you're my enemy. You're my weight class, but I'm not like that anymore now. I couldn't care less. Do you know what I mean? I'm literally, former fighter, but I'm a commentator. I talk about the fights. So, my approach is very different these days. And yeah, we're kind of, we're not too pally and too friendly, but, we have a very nice, cordial relationship. But back then it was definitely a little more chaotic.
Yeah, and I can't let you go without talking about the eye injury. Obviously, it's one of the biggest moments of your career, and we kind of get the backstage look at it, because obviously losing your sight in one eye, it looked bad from an outside point of view, but when we get to see, the horrific pain you were in, the 6 operations and the risk you were taking, it's got to be asked, like, what was the driving force for you to carry on? Because I know in the film you say, I didn't really think about anything else other than carrying on. So what was motivating you? Is it the money, the want of the belt, things like that?
But it was a bit of everything, to be honest. But the reality was that we just made the move to California. Prior to the eye injury, things were going well, so we bought this big stupid house that we don't need, right? And then I had a fictitious and totally fabricated lawsuit from a former manager that was trying to take me to the cleaners because, they were just crooks and wanted to steal all my money, which, by the way, I just won that lawsuit that got totally dismissed, and they owe me a ton of legal fees, so pay up. So that I was fighting this lawsuit, and the way it goes, if someone's suing you, you have to defend it or you lose. That's very, very expensive. And then my fight career essentially had been taken away because of my eye. And I was like, wow, I have to fight. Right now, I'm very lucky. I've got a lot of options open to me, and I was able to use my platform to open many doors. So, I'm thinking things are going well. But back then, I didn't have those opportunities. And literally all I could do was fight. And I for my family, it was for my family more than anything. I wanted to give them a certain lifestyle, and I wanted to make sure that we maintained that lifestyle. And when I stopped fighting it doesn't disappear. And I go back to working in a factory or whatever. So, I was like, I have not done what I set out to achieve. So I'm not going to stop. And yes, it wasn't easy and it was very stressful. And I had to con a few people along the way and stuff like that. But hey, it's not over until it's over, or until the fat lady sings. And there was no fat lady singing. So I was cracking on.
And you mentioned there you had to con a few people with the eye doctors and the physicians, and it's kind of a good time to speak about it, because at the weekend we had Dos Anjos against Moicano, and his eye was all kinds of busted up. Mark Goddard seemed to want to step in, but then it seemed like the doctor come in and waved the fight on and said, he's good to go. So do you think the doctors in the UFC are kind of worried they're getting in the way of the fights, and that's why you were able to get through them type of situations with
no, not at all. Neither you and I are medically trained. Do you know what I mean? So while the fight is, why Moicano specifically, it looks bad on the outside. You know what I mean? But it always does. Like, you see a fighter covered in blood, you clean it all up, there's a little nick there and whatnot, and our heart rate's going, so it's all pumping. And yes, that was swollen shut, and it certainly looked nasty. And I called for his corner to stop the fight. But he's a medically trained professional that has been around the fight game a long time. He's under no pressure from the UFC for the fights to continue, but he knows whether or not he's done it many times. Many times as he said, no, I've got to stop this fight. You hear about it. On that occasion, he allowed the fight to continue. It's not his job to say, is he going to win this fight or is he going to lose this fight? That's his cornerman or the fighter in question. That's their job to say, you're never going to win this fight, so we might as well stop this now. The doctor's job is on that occasion, right then and there, is he medically fit to continue? It's not an opinion of whether he can win the fight. Is he medically fit to continue? And I think, who am I to second guess what he says? As I say, I'm not a medically trained professional. I think his cornerman should have threw in the towel, though, without question.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for your time today, Michael. It's been great to chat to you. I wish we had more of it, but are you going to UFC London in a couple of weeks?
Oh yeah, no, I'll be commentating, so maybe I'll see you there.
Yeah, I'm there, so hopefully I'll bump into you and we can speak a bit more. But until then, good luck with everything. I can't wait to see the actual release of this, which is March 22nd, is it?
March 22nd, I do believe. Yeah, got the premiere next week. Maybe I should be armed with this information. But yeah, March 22nd, video on demand. Check it out. You will enjoy it. Thank you for the support. And Jordan, pleasure talking to you.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.